So let's take a look at this little house on the corner here. I mean, that looks fairly all right. Let's take a look at what it looks like now. Yep. You see, this is decolonization in action. 10 years is all it took to change this into this. And to change that into this. And to change this into that. This is the result of communism, corruption, and decolonization. This is, of course, my country, South Africa, and I would like this video to be a warning to the entire world. Deep within the corporate offices of a data broker, something is happening behind closed doors. He's looking in your window. That stalker, that one's you. He got your information from us, yes, it is true. We don't care for your safety, just money made from you. You cannot escape us. We're data broken bros. I'm going to be real here for a minute. Because of my criticism of the CCP, I've got hordes of stalkers and paid trolls trying to constantly dox me and harass my family. I hate SerpentZA. If it wasn't for Incogni constantly removing my address and personal details from the internet, I'd be in a lot of danger. Maybe you don't have the CCP after you, but there may be a nasty ex or disgruntled coworker, or quite frankly, someone you mistakenly cut off on the freeway. You never know who's trying to find out your personal details, and Incogni can help keep you safe by sending legal letters to data brokers and websites on your behalf, and getting your personal data removed. If you still happen to find your details somewhere online, you can also use Incogni's custom removal feature on the Unlimited and Family Unlimited plan. Go to incogni.com/Winston and use code Winston for 60% off. Incogni helps you wipe yourself from the internet. They can't harm you if they can't find you. Click the link below and claim your 60% off and get your personal data off the market. And now, back to the show. So how is it that the richest country in Africa, that is responsible for the first heart transplant and advances in medical science like the MRI, a country that had nuclear weapons, the best infrastructure in Africa, the richest, the most gold and diamond reserves. So what made this country that was powerful and advanced and rich and first world turn into the rotting, hollowed corpse that it is today? Well, the easy answer and the quickest answer is the ANC took over the government and then the country went to shit. Simple. Now, of course, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of complicated history. There's the whole apartheid. There's the whole white minority being in charge of the entire country and running the entire country. There's colonization. All of these things, of course, is a big and convoluted history. And I'm not here to try and defend any of the bad actions of the past, but I'm also not here to defend any of the bad actions of the present. Because when you hand over stewardship to an incompetent and corrupt communist organization, well, of course your country's going to go to shit. But let's stop talking about it and let's look at it. So I fired up my laptop, I've opened up Google Maps, let's look at Street View of the aptly named Goudstraat, or Gold Street. So this is Golden Street. Let's see what it looks like. What we're going to do is I'm going to take a look, because in Google Maps it has this very interesting thing where you can click see more dates, and you can go all the way back as far as 2010 seems to be the first time they did this. So I'm going to click 2010, and I mean, that is 2010, Goudstraat, I should say. Sorry, that's how you say it in Afrikaans. And it doesn't look amazing, but compared to the most recent one, which is 2023, I mean, it looks a hell of a lot better. I'll tell you that much. Now we've got, I mean, look, razor wire all over everything. What date is this? This is 2013. So let's have a quick look. We went from kind of clean, kind of nice, bunch of people ambling around. That you expect that in Johannesburg. Now, by the way, guys, just for the record, I left South Africa finally in 2006. I went on my business trip to China in 2005, late 2005. Early 2006 is when I left, and I never went back, except for one time for a visa run. And here's the thing. This is a few years after I left. Not that many, 4 years. And this is what it looked like. Let's take a look at 2013. I mean, obviously they tried to prevent people from destroying this castle-looking building, which I have no idea what that thing is, to be honest. Let's go to 2015. I mean, it's starting to look a little rougher, but it's still salvageable, maybe. 2017. Looks like the razor wire started to get stolen and trash just started to line up everywhere. Let's go to 2022. Yeah, looking pretty trashy and rough. And 2023 looks like another fence. Okay, all right. Interesting. Now, of course, we're here to see what it looks like right now. If I click see latest date, we can see. Let's continue on down Grootstraat and see what we can see. When I get to a particularly rough looking area, I will, for instance, just here, we're still in that same castle thing. Let's just quickly go back to 2010 and see what it looks like. And although it's still not great, that's a huge difference. Yeah, that's a very big difference. Look at that. This is what I would like to call the Mandela effect. Now, I'm going to try my best to describe to you why this happened as we go along. Because, I mean, that compared to that is big. So let's continue on down Goat Street or Grootstraat and see what else we can see. We got ourselves the wonderful sort of mucky puddle type thing over here. Let's see what it looked like in 2010. Come on, you can go back to 2010, can't you? Looks like 2010 is not available. Back in 2013, not too bad. I mean, in comparison. Let's continue on down with the latest date, shall we? Let's quickly switch and see. Yeah, you see, you switch the date and immediately you see how the pavement has been ruined. By the way, the reason why, if you look at the pavement, you'll see a lot of the tiles are missing and so on. It's because people steal those. Why would somebody steal a tile from the side of the road? Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. You can use it when you construct your makeshift house in the shanty towns. You can presumably sell it somewhere. I don't know who would buy it, but there are all kinds of uses. You use it as a weapon. You can use it for a tool. There's all sorts of things you can use it for. Now, of course, urban decay is not unique to South Africa, but it's the scale at which it has happened in South Africa that I believe is fairly unique, because we're looking at urban decay here, right? This is what it looked like in 2010. Let's switch over to the latest one, which is 2022, and you start to see trash everywhere and holes in the side of the road and the usual type of thing. It's not about just the decay. It's about the fact that, what on earth is that guy doing over there? Anyway, it's the fact that everything in the country is decayed alongside it. Things like basic services. You know that water, you turn on the tap in your house, water comes out. South Africa used to have incredibly clean, well-treated water. That's a thing of the past. And even in some of the poshest areas right now, water gets cut off sometimes weeks at a time. So, electricity is one thing. We all know that South Africa suffers from what's called load shedding, where the electricity just goes off randomly and all the time, sometimes for days at a time, sometimes for weeks, depending on your area, because the infrastructure was never maintained or upgraded since the new government took over. And they just ran it until it basically broke or started to break. So we have a terrible situation where load shedding has become a way of life in South Africa. And although it gets better certain periods, it gets worse again. It's bad. So electricity is unreliable in South Africa. On top of that, we have, of course, the water being unreliable. Now, when you start to lose very basic services, you know that a country is in trouble. It's very interesting to see how, in some cases, you can see there is some sort of attempt to do a little bit of maintenance here and there and build, but unfortunately, that's just not how it goes. Let's take a look at this particular street corner. Let's go to 2010. And I mean, look, it's ugly. I'll be honest with you. I never thought Johannesburg was a particularly pretty or good-looking city. It has its moments. Some of the skyscrapers look kind of cool. At night, it can look nice. And there were some neighborhoods, especially, they used to be fancy back in the 50s and 60s, something like that. They look kind of cool. But, I mean, it's a pretty ugly city. If we go to May 2022, this is what you see. And that's kind of interesting. I like the mural on the wall there. You can see that says, "Our freedom is here." And, I mean, it's a bit of a juxtaposition, isn't it? And here's the thing. Let's not beat around the bush. We all know why this happened. It's very simple. When the ANC took over South Africa, the ANC being the African National Congress, the country just went downhill. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You can just look at what I'm looking at here and see just how much in the span of 10 years the place is degraded. And like I said, it's indicative of the entire country, not just Grootstraat and a couple of other things that we're going to look at here, but just in general, the whole place is run down. In every aspect, the economy is in shambles. When I left South Africa, the South African rand was worth more than the Chinese yuan. I believe it was like 1.18 or something like that. Let's take a look at how much it's worth now. If I say 100 rands, South African rands, ZAR, I'm working it out on my phone here, to CNY, which is the Chinese yuan, I get only 42.74 yuan. I would have got 118. Now, do you see what I mean? That's more than half of the entire economy's worth, just completely gutted in the time since I left South Africa. So the economy is in shambles. The infrastructure is in shambles. The cities are in shambles. Security is in shambles. Everything is in shambles. And again, we know the reason. It's because of the ANC. Let's take a look at another road while we talk about the state of South Africa and again, what led it to this particular state. This is 2025. Let's go back to 2013. And I mean, although it's still kind of shitty, excuse my language, it's far nicer, wouldn't you say? You've got a semblance of a road. If I go to 2025, you can see things are kind of just all screwed up. It looks like there's a tavern there now, or a shebeen, as it's called in South Africa. And what do we got here? Got a very nice road over here. This looks fantastic to drive over. Let's see, the state of the roads, of course, is another thing, another way to tell. When you start to get potholes everywhere. Let's go back to 2009. And, yeah, there's no massive pothole there. Was it ever fixed, though? No, see, it gets a little worse. Gets a little worse. We're just going through the years here. Gets worse. It hasn't been fixed. Gets worse. Gets worse. Just becomes crap, really, doesn't it? And then I like the random tire over there. It adds a little bit to the ambiance, doesn't it? Let's go to 2025, and I can't see where the tire is. Did the tire survive? I'm curious, aren't you? Let's go back a little bit, see if that tire is still there. I'm wondering if that tire can last for years or not. Hang on a second. Is that it? Let me go back one more. Let's turn around. No, unfortunately the tire's gone. It's kind of a bit of a letdown. Maybe we'll find it further down the road. Let's keep going. So, South Africa has a complicated history, as everybody knows. Apartheid and all of that sort of thing. What on earth is this? Friends and Family Tire Fitment Center. Okay, that's nice. Looks like the place to go if you need your tires put on your car. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but looks perfectly legit to me. So why is it that this place is run down this much? I mean, we all know South Africa has a bit of a rocky past. We're on Rocky Street. And I'm going to be honest with you, Rocky Street, not the kind of place you want to go. Even when I was still living in South Africa, I've been to Rocky Street a bunch of times. There used to actually be a military surplus store somewhere on here that I used to go to get jackets and stuff. But I'll tell you one thing. It's always been known as a dodgy area. It's in a place called Yeovil, and it's not really a place you'd ever want to go. But if we take a look at, say, now, 2025, and we compare it to back in, say, 2013, you can see it's night and day. It's still a sus area, but you know what? It doesn't look that bad. It's really not too bad. Anyway, why is everything degraded? Well, okay, we had apartheid in South Africa. We had a situation where the Dutch came and colonized South Africa in, I believe, 1652. I think that's the date. I could be wrong, but it's all the way back then. And then, of course, the British came in and took over, and we had the Boer Wars and what have you, and there's all sorts of nonsense going on. And you had the situation where you had a European minority built the country. The European minority ruled the country. And, of course, the majority of the people, this is later on, of course, when the Bantus came down. Because when the Dutch landed in South Africa, there were only a few nomadic tribes of the Khoisan, which are these absolutely marvelous people who can survive in the desert, run long distances, and they find water and roots, and they're absolutely fascinating people. They speak with clicks. That's who the Dutch encountered when they first arrived. But then later on, the Bantus came down. Those are the Zulus and the Xhosas and all the warring tribes. They came down. Anyway, we had a situation where they came down, and of course they were treated as second-class citizens. That's apartheid for you. Absolute horrible part of history. And while apartheid is now relegated to the history books, and I think we can all look back and say that it was appalling and a terrible idea, it doesn't mean that we can't look at what's happening now and say it's appalling and a bad idea. And what's happening now is horrendous. I mean, let's take a look here. Side of the road, let's go back to 2013. You know what? The bricks were still there. Still had, a road that resembles a road. We go back to 2025 and, well, the bricks are missing. You've got people have smashed through walls and had to repair it. You've got, it looks like the building over here has been set on fire. I mean, let's look what it used to look like. Well, it used to be a beauty parlor. I don't know about you guys, but not my idea of a place to go to get like a beauty treatment anyway. Now it's a butchery and a burnt out husk. I guess that's what you could call it. Anyway, what we're seeing here is decolonization in action. And what is decolonization? Well, it's a buzzword that you've heard a lot, especially if you've hung out at universities, if you hang out in left-wing circles, you'll hear about decolonization. And I think it's probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's a communist idea, and it's this idea that you have to remove the colonization from something, and it could be anything. They say decolonize science and decolonize South Africa, decolonize. You can basically decolonize anything. I suppose you could decolonize your dishwasher if you wanted to. But the whole point is, nobody in their right mind would ever want to decolonize Africa, especially not the Africans that live there. Let me put it to you this way. If you were to decolonize South Africa, literally, you'd have to get rid of electricity. You'd have to get rid of roads, cars, the internet, more importantly, medicine, corn, which, maybe there's something people don't really know a lot about, but when the Europeans brought corn to Africa, to South Africa, the population exploded because now there was a reliable source of starch. Because Africa didn't have corn before. Corn is a New World food. And so now, with not only medicine to treat illnesses, because people used to die all the time of very basic illnesses, of course, you now had a reliable, easy to grow, plentiful crop to keep everyone going. So corn really, after corn was introduced, the population just skyrocketed and went through the roof. So you'd have to take away things like corn, and that's millipap, which is the most, millipap is like what rice is to China or Japan. You take away millipap and there's not much left. You kind of have to live off the land and go kill an animal and eat it type thing. So you'd have to take away all of that. You'd have to take away every technology. Because when the Dutch landed in South Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, there was no written language. None of the tribes had a written language. Nobody had invented the wheel. People were living nomadic lifestyles. And I mean, it sounds romantic. Yes, you go from place to place to keep your cows or your cattle or whatever kind of animals you have alive. But it's not romantic. It sucks. Can you imagine that you have to move from place to place constantly just to stay alive? And I'm talking about just to keep your animals alive so that you can eat them. Just to keep yourself alive, you have to keep following where the water is, where the grass is. You can never settle down. You've got other tribes invading you all the time. You're battling with them, bloody battles. You're having them come and steal your women and, destroy and burn your place down and all of that kind of thing. You've got tribes selling people to other tribes as slaves. You've got cannibalism. You've got all sorts of nasty things going on. It's not idyllic. It's not really something that anybody wants to return to in South Africa. It doesn't matter what tribe they're from or where their ancestors come from. Nobody wants to go back to that lifestyle. If you're a Zulu, the last thing he wants is to be under the command of Shaka Zulu and being made to run over thorns to prove his worth and to do all these barbaric things that Shaka Zulu demanded of his men. I don't think anybody wants that. Honestly. Who wants to go back to that lifestyle? And that's, honestly, if you take the word decolonization at its core, that's what people want. They want to tear down the entire system. They want to tear down the infrastructure, get rid of everything, and have nothing. Revert back to the most simple base way of survival, which is dumb. This is the future. This is 2026. We have AI and we have spaceships and we have all of this. Why would you want to go herd some cows and get attacked by neighboring tribes all the time? You don't. It's stupid. So I propose something to everybody who talks about decolonization. Because look, you're seeing it here, getting rid of the infrastructure. It's quite true. Think about it. The electricity is going away in South Africa. It's spotty all the time. The water, running water in people's homes and in entire areas gets cut off all the time. You're reverting back. So I propose something here. Rather than continue down this path of wanting to destroy everything that's good about modern society and civilization when it comes to not just the West, but the entire world, why not just work together with people? Why not just stop being so hostile? Stop blaming all your problems on somebody else. Because isn't it funny how when I was living in South Africa as a young boy and a young man, I was constantly blamed for people's poverty and for people's problems and for their crime and for the things that they do because random ancestors of mine were white and came to South Africa. Because I'm not even like a long-standing South African, from a lineage. My grandfather flew down to South Africa from England during World War II. On my father's side, there are some members that have been there for a long time. But, because of the color of my skin, I was targeted constantly and blamed for everything. But as soon as I left South Africa, because I didn't have anything, I was a young man. I didn't have my own property. I didn't have accumulated wealth. I didn't own anything of any significance. And when I left South Africa, I sold everything. I left with nothing other than a few, what was it, about $1,000 was all I had at the age of 25 after all my years working, in the field of IT and having a job and doing all the stuff I did. I had nothing. So as soon as I left South Africa, well, they couldn't blame me anymore. So it's almost like it was a regional sin to live there. If you lived there and you were white, well, you're the cause of all the problems. And you're the reason why this street looks like it does. And you're the reason why the murder rate is so high and South Africa is the rape capital of the world. And you're the reason why it's falling apart. You leave it, all of a sudden, no, they have to find somebody else. But back to my whole point about decolonization. So let's take a look at this little house on the corner here. I mean, that looks fairly all right. Let's take a look at what it looks like now. Yep. You see, this is decolonization in action. So, I'm going to stop it here. Of course, I could continue to go down all the streets in Johannesburg and show you the before and after and lament the decay, lament the absolute state of the place and how it's gone downhill. But there's no point. I mean, you could do it yourself if you have a little bit of spare time. Go to downtown Johannesburg. You can look through the nice parts, go down the side alleys, look at the before and after, look at how terrible it's become. But, this is no surprise to me. It was doing that when I was still in South Africa. In my entire adult life, South Africa was in decline. And other than, of course, they would build new malls or casinos or something in the suburbs or whatever, the established stuff that was there was just degrading. And I could reminisce about all the fun I had getting lost on all the one-way streets in downtown Johannesburg on the way back from a night out, that type of thing. But there's no point. I wanted to, again, talk a little bit about this idea of decolonialism and who's behind it. And it's communists. The ANC is a communist party. They're the government that currently runs South Africa and took over South Africa. They always were communists. They always will be communists. And communists suck, let's be honest. And these people that want to tear down systems that work, tear down infrastructure, and burn it all down, these horrible communists that want to do this, we got to stop putting up with them. Because if you put up with them and you tolerate them, this is the result. I know, especially now, we're living in a very divided time across the entire world, specifically in the developed world. You know, right now I'm living in the States. Best country I've ever lived in, by the way. Friendliest people, nicest people, safest place I've ever lived in. Everything works here. The law works. If you need the police, they will help. If you send a mail, like a letter in the mail, it actually arrives, which is a novelty to me still to this day. Try to do that in South Africa. Try to send a parcel to someone, see if it actually arrives through the post. That's a joke. Wonderful place. But I'm seeing all this division constantly. And, you know, American politics is always that, like you're either right-wing or left-wing, or you're either liberal or you're conservative, you're a Nazi or a crazy lunatic, drag queen story hour type person. There's always extremes, and there's always all sorts of nonsense going on. I mean, I can look at that and ignore it mostly, but it's become very intense recently, and specifically in places like America and the UK. And I'd like you guys to take a look at South Africa, because you can forget your local politics and you can go see what communism does. People that are trying to push any kind of communist agenda, that's your future. It's that simple. It can't go any other way. Communism doesn't work. A lot of people point to China and say, hey guys, look, China's communist and they've got flashy lights in their buildings and robots that can do a flip. Well, I'll tell you what, China's not communist. It's crony capitalist and authoritarian. And they run businesses and they engage in capitalism a hell of a lot more than most people do. It's not communist. So stop looking to communism. Also, China's very unfree and not a very good example to use ever, you know, unless you enjoy having no freedom in your life. So let's stop this garbage. When people start talking about decolonialism, tell them to take a hike and maybe offer them an olive branch and say, you know what? Instead of you trying to tear down systems that exist that work, how about you help me maintain them? How about we build them up together? How about we improve them together? How about we work together? Of course, they're probably going to say no and have a screaming fit in your face, but you know what? That's life. But I would like to see, going forward as much as possible, at least if I ever had any say in the matter, I'd like to see people stop making enemies out of their neighbors, stop making enemies out of their fellow countrymen, and start making enemies out of communists. Anyway, guys, until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome.